Hello everyone! Welcome back to a very special video. I'm DTM as always, and in this video, I'll be doing something different for my channel. I want to discuss how to save orbs in FEH. And now, I know what you're thinking, DTM, that's easy, just save orbs. And, well, it does ultimately come down to that, but it is important to remember that FEH is a gacha game, and its predatory business model depends on everything in the game trying to psychologically manipulate you to spend money. And I know many feel this need or compulsion to summon. I've had many requests from fellow viewers and FEHtubers to make this video, so hopefully this can be helpful to all of y'all who want to save orbs and are struggling to save orbs. And yeah, hopefully I'll be able to give some tips and tricks to resist that temptation IS gives, and some guidelines to follow to save orbs, and hopefully maximize your FEH experience. But before we get into that, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that jazz to help support the channel. It only takes 5 seconds to subscribe, but it truly does help out this channel a lot. I really do appreciate all the constant support. If you find any of this helpful at all, it would be greatly appreciated. And yeah. So before we begin, I want to make it very clear that what I'm about to tell you all is a strategy to help save orbs for those who want to save orbs and are struggling to do so. Don't think of it as me prescribing a way that I think everyone needs to play as. I do recognize that this strategy might not be fun for a lot of players, especially those that like the thrill of getting a new unit and being able to play with them. And even if you are wanting to save orbs, I'm not saying this is the only method. If you already have your own method of saving orbs and are doing good at that, then, well, you don't really need this video. Again, this is only for those that want to save orbs and are struggling to do so. I will also be very blunt about my pessimistic view of summoning, since it is important to recognize that the illusion and temptation IS invokes is just that, an illusion. I do want to say though that if I say something that you shouldn't do and you've been doing beforehand, that is completely okay and completely fine and valid. You aren't any less due to that. I'm only talking about summoning and its mechanics, and I just want those that want to save to be supported and have the best experience. Like, I love you all. Ultimately, play how you want. But again, for those who do want to save orbs and are struggling to do so, I hope this will be helpful. So I guess to start this off, it is important to ask, why do you play FEH? That might sound like a silly question, but it is crucial to figure out what you want to save for. What do you want to get out of FEH? What are your goals in FEH? Saving orbs implies that you are saving for something, and figuring out exactly what that is allows you to focus on that thing to drive you to save orbs. This will be different for everyone. Some might want to plus 10 their favorite characters. Some might want to save for a potential future alt, or maybe to CYL. Some might want to compete in the high ranks of, say, Ether raids or Summoners duels. Whatever the case is, define these goals for yourself and try to be as clear as possible. Like for me, my goals are to plus 10 every Lucina version and to climb the ranks in Ether raids and Summoners duels, hopefully being able to reach rank 1 in the future. That will set the course of how I evaluate banners on whether or not to pull. Now, something to keep in mind, it is okay to have multiple goals. That is completely natural. However, be aware that the more goals you have, the less orb savings you will have. So do try to narrow it down to the absolute essentials. In addition, goals obviously change over time. That is natural. Like, how you engage with FEH will obviously change as you get more experience and just play more in the game. However, it is very important that you do not change your goals in reaction to a new banner, for instance. That is something that you should not do. It is very easy to say to yourself, oh, I've always wanted to get into Arena, so I'll just summon for the new legendary. Or like, oh, Altina has always been my favorite character ever since we met her in Path of Radiance, surely. In order to justify summoning, despite not previously caring about Arena or Altina. I do not recommend that. Again, it is natural to want to get into Arena or become an Altina fan during the course of playing FEH, but don't change your goals in reaction to a new banner for the purpose of justifying spending. Don't fall for that. At the very least, wait. So now that you have clearly defined a narrow set of goals for FEH, the next step would be to formulate exactly when you will summon based on those goals. So based on those goals, formulate those conditions. The more specific, the better. The less allowances, the better. And once you establish those, it is important to never ever summon on anything other than those criteria. I repeat, do not summon on anything other than those criteria. And just as before, do not change your condition at the beginning of the banner. It is easy to justify that, but that is a trap. Again, how you play and enjoy FEH evolves, and that is natural, but it is easy when a new banner releases to justify summoning by changing those conditions, saying, oh, this actually helps me, etc. Yeah, don't do that, especially not in reaction to a new banner for the purpose of that justification. At the very least, wait. So yeah, that is the main strategy at a high level. Define your goals, set your conditions for summoning based on those goals, and don't summon on anything else. Obviously, as I mentioned before, goals and conditions can change, but it is important to not do that in reaction to a new banner to justify summoning. Be very careful about that. So now I guess the $1 million question is, how do I set my criteria based on my goals? Well, unfortunately, these criteria will greatly depend on the goal, so it is hard to give overall advice on how to formulate those criteria, but I can give you examples. For instance, my goal to plus 10 every Lucina version, the criteria will be like, I will allow myself to summon on a banner with Lucina on it, right? And some of these goals will be fairly straightforward, like that Lucina instance. Or if you're saving for a particular banner, like CYL or AHR, well, the criteria just becomes then, that banner is a CYL banner, or that banner is an AHR banner, right? So that was pretty straightforward, but what about the more complicated goals and criteria, especially for the competitive modes, like Arena, Aether Raids, Summoner's Duels? Well, I'll walk through the competitive modes and how I view them, but just keep in mind that this is my personal opinion and my personal example. Feel free to adjust these criteria to fit your personal context and needs and goals, etc. But to start, we can start with Aether Raids, since I did mention my goal of climbing the ranks of Aether Raids. Well, for Aether Raids, the only thing you really need to summon for to progress in rank is offense mythic merges. That's the only thing that guarantees progression in the form of extra lift. You don't really need any other unit. Maybe 2 defense mythics of each season, but other than that, you don't need to summon for anything else. Don't even need defense mythic merges, or even more than those 2 of each. And obviously, you don't need any particular unit. A lot of times, people fall into this trap of feeling they need the latest meta unit, or something similar to succeed. But that is definitely not true at all, so don't fall for the hype. You can easily make do with what you have, especially these days for Aether Raids, as AR is fairly straightforward nowadays. The only thing holding you back is offensive mythic merges. So that will be your criteria. Now, it is important to know that legendary and mythic banners are notoriously terrible to snipe specific units due to their lower individual rates, so it is only worth summoning if there is a good mythic share with it, or if it's sharing with another goal, say like Arena. So I guess an example criteria with all of that considered will be, for AR, I will allow myself to summon on a banner with at least 2 offensive mythic merge projects that are sharing a color. That will be my criteria for that goal. For Arena, it is very similar, but for legendary units. You really only need 3 legendaries of different seasons to have full seasonal coverage. So if Arena is your goal, the criteria will be like I want a legendary share of at least 2, best case 3, legendaries of different seasons sharing a color. Fairly straightforward after the Ether Raids example. And after that, once the F2P Grail options no longer cut it, you can then look to high-scoring premium units like dual units. And obviously, when talking about legendary or mythic share, those can overlap as well if you're, say, focused on both arena and Ether Raids. You can mix and match mythics and legendaries that way as well. Now, for summoner duels, this one gets interesting because there really isn't a need for a specific unit type. I would argue that you actually don't need to summon specifically for summoners duels, with maybe one exception. Otherwise, honestly, most players can make do with what they have in their barracks and what they got pursuing other goals to do well. Obviously, there are units that greatly help you succeed in the higher ranks, but it is very easy to fall into the trap of feeling the need to get the shiny new unit in order to succeed. Like, a lot of people express that Summer Thor was a must-pull for Summoners Duels. I don't agree that Summer Thor was a must-pull. You don't need Summer Thor to do well in SD. Like, I don't have Summer Thor, and I never felt that being limiting. And facing Summer Thor, I never felt particularly threatened by her. On my last SDR run, it was not Summoner Thor, or Yuri, or Dual Chrom, Katya, etc. that caused me trouble. What caused me to lose was the weird off-meta units like a +10 Brave Ike, +10 Legendary Corn, etc. Not the meta or shiny new toy. Obviously, if your barracks is very tragic, there can be the case to summon for some meta units, but again, only do that after you've done multiple SD runs and have waited to truly evaluate what you need. It is important to remember that what is power creep or meta is not the same as what is needed. It is very easy to equate the two, but obviously those things are not equal at all. They're very different things, so do not equate the two. Now, I did mention that one exception, at least as of the recording of this video, and that is a good Hardy Fighter far save unit. That, I think, is like the only exception that actually makes a huge difference in being a gatekeeper for you for doing well in Summoners Duels. So that can be the criteria. I will allow myself to summon for Hardy Fighter fodder and a far save unit like Brave Hector. But again, I personally only summoned like 7 months after Hardy Fighter first showed up, after I experienced many SDR runs and made that conclusion. A little patience goes a long way. And honestly, I've seen people try to run shield pulls as an alternative as well, which actually works really well. So there are options in that case. But yeah, otherwise, again, most players can make do with what they have in their barracks and what they got pursuing other goals. And also, as a side note, you absolutely do not need merges at all in SD. A completely unmerged team, even with an unmerged far save, will be more than enough. And yeah, that basically covers the strategy. That's basically the high-level overview, right? You figure out why you're playing FEH, what are your goals in FEH, what you want to get out of FEH, and then once you concretely define those, you set criteria based on those goals on when you will allow yourself to summon. And obviously, you only summon if a banner meets those criteria. This should work for pretty much every player, even casual and competitive players, since it's really goal dependent, right? Like, the goal could be to +10 a unit, and this strategy should work for that. I will give some more in-depth further actions to help save, some general tips and guidelines even further. The first of which is to try and plan out your orb savings far in advance. We do get roughly 320 orbs a month, and there is advanced knowledge of legendary and mythic reruns, whether that be on a normal banner or a remix banner. Using that knowledge, you can plan out in advance when you'll summon and how much you'll summon. That way, you can better manage your orbs and can always make sure that you have orbs left over in case there is a surprise banner that fits the criteria you are going for, or a new alt of your favorite character. I personally have been posting monthly updates on my orb budgeting on Twitter, and you can see I plan things out way in advance and always make sure I have the orbs needed when banners I need for my goals pop up. This next tip is actually extremely important. It would be to set a hard limit of orbs that you are going to spend on a banner. This goes into the orb budgeting mentioned before and planning how much you'll spend on each banner like above, but this amount of orbs should be a hard limit. This helps ensure against desperately summoning for like the last remaining copy or whatnot, or like falling into that spiral. It is extremely important when summoning to stick to this hard limit and to never ever go over. It doesn't matter if you have a pity rate of like 6 or 7% or whatnot. That is a trap. Pity is a lie, and you should never ever go over your hard limit to break pity. Like, pity is just there as a psychological manipulation trick for IS to keep you summoning. So don't fall for that. Just because you have a high pity doesn't mean you'll get a 5-star sooner. You can easily spend hundreds of orbs further and still not get anything. Don't fall for that. It doesn't matter if you're, say, at +9 and just want that final copy. Just stop. If you are at your hard limit, it's not worth going over that final copy and breaking the limit. That is just a recipe for disaster. There will always be chances to summon on them again in the future, even if it's like 10 months away. So just don't. Hard limits are important to not get sucked into spending way too many orbs on one project and leaving other goals in the dust, and in the end potentially not even being able to achieve that goal. It is important to control orb spending with that hard limit, so do please set a hard limit and never ever go over them, no matter how tempting it is. Like, you can say, I'll just break this pity, but again, pity is a lie. That is famous last words. Don't let IS win. Another tip would be to only summon if you have a huge amount of orbs. RNG is a thing, so it is very important to save a huge amount of orbs before going into a banner to reduce your chances of getting disaster results. I'm talking like at minimum 500 orbs before going into, say, a legendary or mythic banner. Ideally 1,000. Don't ever go into a banner with only 100 or even 200 or 300 orbs. It is very easy to get screwed. And on that note, don't get baited by the free summon tempting you to spend that 5 to 9 orbs for the same color stone in the circle. What if that was Fallen Rhea, right? It is not. That is not a 5-star, and it is just a risk. You just wasted your orbs for nothing. Congratulations, you played yourself. Like, it adds up. Every orb is precious, so please don't waste it by going in with only a few hundred. It is not enough, especially with RNG being a cruel mistress. This next tip is pretty standard and it's been spread out a lot, but to not summon day 1 on a banner, you should always wait until near the end so that, one, you can scout the upcoming banners and avoid getting caught in the hype. And another thing is that you don't need to +10 a unit on release. There is nothing special about +10ing a unit besides stats or like the feeling of a unit being completed. But again, that is a psychological trick IS uses to keep you to summon. It is better to summon to +10 over time with a spark. I know instant gratification is a thing, but again, instant gratification is a psychological trick IS uses to keep you summoning. And it is important to not let IS win. This is especially true for CYL, right? Like, the best strategy for CYL is to spark on release and then wait for the Hero Fest to continuing summon. Because Hero Fest gives you better rates, even if you have to wait like 8 months. The average savings, if you do this, is 500 orbs compared to just +10ing on release. That is a huge amount of orbs, right? So even though instant gratification is very tempting, a little patience goes a long, long way. So those were some tips just in general that you can fit with the strategy. These last two, I think, are just general advice on my view on what is worth summoning or not. So again, this is just my own opinion, but if you're looking to save more orbs, this is some useful advice, I would say. The first is to recognize that sparking isn't free. Don't just spark because you can spark. Like, it is tempting to spark a new unit just because it is guaranteed, but guaranteed does not equal free, right? Like, it still costs orbs for that sparked unit. And sometimes it's not even free, you need FEH Pass, but putting that issue aside, only spark a unit if it meets the criteria you created, just like any other banner. 150 orbs is still orb spent, and if it isn't for something in service of your goals, then that is just 150 orbs that is wasted, that you don't need for your goals. And I know goals can change, as I mentioned before, but again, don't do that in reaction to a new banner to justify summoning. And lastly, again, this is just my personal opinion, but I would never recommend summoning specifically for fodder. You can always make do with what you have in your barracks, or just the thing IS gives out for free. Like, do you really need Vital Astra for your Lucina? Probably not, to be perfectly honest. Any 2-turn special will work just fine, and 99% of the time won't make a difference. Like, IS knew what they were doing in creating Vital Astra as an inheritable option, since it did generate a lot of hype, but it is also a huge trap by IS. Budget options are completely valid to use, even competitively in AR or Summoners duels. Like, I use Speed Def Form on my Knot instead of Steady Posture in Summoners duels, and it works fine. So, never summon specifically for fodder. You absolutely do not need it, and you can do with just what you have in your barracks. I will say, as I mentioned before, Hardy Fighter Far Save is an exception, but that is really only if you care about Summoners duels are in the high ranks, which is not many people, so yeah. And even then, Shield Pulse, as I mentioned before, can work, so yeah. And yeah, that about covers the video and the strategies I use to save orbs. Again, at a high level overview, it is fairly straightforward. You define exactly what your goals are in FEH, or why you are playing FEH, what you want to get out of it, and then based on those goals, formulate the criteria that you set up for yourself to allow yourself to summon only on banners that meet those criteria based on those goals. And obviously, from then on, skip every other banner. That is a high-level overview, and I did go in depth on some more specific, detailed strategies to save even more and to help you even more. And hopefully this was helpful to you all. If it was, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that jazz to help support the channel. It only takes 5 seconds to subscribe, but it truly does help out this channel a lot. And I really do appreciate all the constant support. And yeah, like I mentioned before, this is only one strategy for saving orbs. This is not the only strategy, and this is not me dictating to you that you should only play this way and every other way is invalid. That is not what I'm trying to say. Ultimately, do play for what you want and how you want in FEH. But for those of you who are wanting to save orbs and struggling to save orbs, this strategy should help you in doing that. And hopefully you'll be able to achieve your dreams in FEH and the desired units, the desired ranks, desired everything in FEH. And yeah, hopefully y'all enjoyed. Comment down below what your goals are in FEH. I am very curious. And yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and see you all next time.